Your first book describes brilliantly being brought up by a communist family, which again would seem incredible to anyone now that there could have been communists in Britain and that it was fine to be a communist.
Oh, right,
it wasn't, you know, it was okay. It was a point of view. Trade union leaders were allowed to be communists. You know, you could be a Marxist historian and you weren't like going to be lynched by a tabloid.
Yeah.
But so that you came to London doing art school, and you sort of. The first thing where you thought you could do comedy really was being in a Brecht play, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I was a
What people have to understand is that none of this existed. There was
No, not until
there was a
me.
working men's club comedy circuit
Yeah.
of the same 100 guys doing the same 500 old gags. But what we understand of stand-up, there was nothing really like that. You had your folk singer guys doing the
was 3 or
bits,
4 of
Jasper
them, yeah,
Carrot and whatever,
Jasper,
doing the
Billy,
bits in
yeah.
between. But so you had a sense you wanted to be funny and you weren't in a student review. What were you going to do?
Exactly, yeah. No, I mean, at first I didn't. I mean, yeah, I mean, I sort of got into acting, performing fairly slowly, but there was this mate of mine called Cliff who was, he'd been at school with me, a couple of years older. His parents were also in the Communist Party. He came back, he'd been in Paris, he came back to Britain and he started this Brechtian troupe. There was about 10 of us doing songs and poems of Bertolt Brecht. You know, what the stripper thinks of while she's having an abortion or whatever, you know. Surabaya, Johnny, why am I feeling so bad?
Funny, right? You do that, but I can see all that in your early stand-up.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's exactly like it sort of felt like. I mean, you watched it as a kid, you thought, "Why is he like an East European performance artist or something?"
Yeah.
It sort of, it was
that's the
very
thing.
informed by that sensibility, isn't it?
That's,
You know?
again, that's that thing about, I always think, why not use everything? You
Yeah,
know, I used absolutely everything. I used the Brecht thing, I used aspects of performance art that I'd seen at art school. You know, I used my own experience living in the, you know, working and living in the tower block and all that. Because why not, you know?
But doing that, you write about how you've worked out how to make the same bits funny every night, and you felt like some of the actors didn't.
That was the difference. That's the difference between, I think, in a way, actors and comics. When I was in the Brecht thing, they get a laugh one night, and then they sort of try and do it different. And all that. I think, well, why have you got to get it?
Yeah.
You got it right. Why fuck with it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's quite. I think that I felt very strongly that was very disrespectful to comedy. You know, that you wouldn't. You know,
were you writing
same.
that about after that wanting to put this sort of, well, it's like a kind of review show, isn't it? The two of you.
Me and Bill,
Yeah, but Bill.
Bill Monks.
Bill Monks. Yeah, and sort of, and so it's called Never Mind the Bulk. No,
we were called Threepenny Theatre, which was the Brecht cabaret, and then I think the show was called Never Mind the Bulk.
Yeah, and trying, but again, where did you place it then? I mean, that's another thing of people roughly contemporary. Sort of John Dowie, I know, there wasn't comedy clubs. He sort of had to kind of find places, art centres, arts labs, or benefits, or trade union
I always
things.
think poor John Dowie, because he just came just a bit too soon.
Yeah.
And me and Cliff and Bill, me and Cliff anyway,
Yeah.
went to see him at the Bush in 76, 77. I thought, this is brilliant.
Yeah, no, he was. Yeah, and actually by the time
it all came along, he was so pissed off.
Well, yeah.
That he couldn't.
But also he had an hour. He didn't have like 5 minutes, so he couldn't come and his rhythm was wrong. I mean, he's one of
he's one of the
great
the unknown
lost
comics.
I mean, and also
should be a memorial to him.
From an era where it's barely documented. I mean, if you know, because now people doing their first 5 minutes, someone's camera phones it, it's on YouTube. It's hardly. There's about 4 minutes footage of John Dowie in existence.
And he was one of the early fallen martyrs of comedy. But
the early fallen martyrs. A terrible sort of. He's not dead, you know.
We might as well be. He's not famous. He never had his own TV series. He might as well be dead. But so I just the Brechtian cabaret troupe split up, and then just one Christmas I had this idea. I suddenly thought, there's no comedy out there for people like me. You know, there's political smart about drugs, lifestyle. And so I just set about writing it, and then me and Bill, who was the only other guy left from the comedy troupe, and Cliff, we then set about, you know, performing. And then, like you say about John Dowie, we again, there was nowhere to perform. student unions, yeah, little art centres, people's houses.
Yeah.
You know, it was difficult. Sometimes you go to a place like we went to the tram shed, which was the home of what would you call those, Hale and Pace.
Yeah.
And they had a big following, and we'd never used mics before, and it just the bloke who ran it had to come on and say, "Hey, now give these lads a chance."
Yeah.
He had to give the audience a talking to, because we were going down so badly.
Yeah. So what, they had a gig there? So they
had a gig there, and they knew they
kind of pre-alternative.
Yeah,
sort of,
they just pre.
Yeah.
You know, nothing emerges.
Yeah,
it's like every invention is an agglomeration of what came before it, isn't it? And when I sort of, do the whole thing about it was me, I invented everything. There was nothing before me, but that's a self-serving lie.
Well, actually, the book's an interesting mixture. It's 99% modest, with sudden flashes of incredible arrogance.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, I love the one chapter where you end it quite justifiably saying, you say, having talked very honestly about your fears when you're doing stand-up, your anxieties, your nervousness about it, the feeling you weren't good enough or whatever, you do end one of the early chapters by saying, I'm not saying that the massive business that stand-up is today with stadiums and tours and all this wouldn't have happened without me, but it wouldn't have happened in the same way and at the same point. And actually, to me, the key to it seems to be that reading this book, although admittedly it's written by you, it seems to me that, without this Alexei Sayle figure. No, what it seems to be is that for better or worse, as all these different people that wanted to do a different sort of thing in about 78, 79, 80 were coming together, you were one of the people that gave it an ideology.
Yeah.
And its ideology was, let's not do racism, let's not do sexism, let's not do all those tropes. And whether that was politically the right thing to do or not, which is something other people can argue about, it certainly meant that it had ground rules and it had a dogma, and it had a manifesto. And all great art movements, need some sort of manifesto. And the manifesto, you wouldn't have this now if it hadn't had something to start from.
It hadn't had something, and then later on, people betray the revolution.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Ben Elton.